Hey, what's going on, everybody? So I've come to a bit of a conclusion here with this whole situation on June 25th, 2013. So in one of the emails, I was able to find out that this person who was being scheduled by their friend, who I found out is named Eliza, or sometimes she goes by Lisa with a Z, I was able to find out that her friend is actually named Milana Valmont, as we can see here in this email. And this name, came up on the days prior, Milana Valmont. Here we see Jeffrey Epstein was asking, what is her last name? And I believe this is Leslie Groff telling him it's Milana Valmont because Milana's friend Lisa at some point told Leslie that that's her full name in another email. I think I might have that here. Yep. So Epstein asks Leslie, what's her full name? Leslie gets with the girl who's setting up her friend. Her friend says, her name is Milana Valmont. And then Leslie goes back to Epstein and says, okay, that's her name. It's Milana Valmont. And basically what they end up doing is they end up scheduling a meeting for 2 p.m. on June 24th. But for some reason, Milana ends up getting stuck in Washington, D.C. on this day, and they don't end up having the meeting. It actually gets scheduled for 10:30. I think I described this in my prior video. But then once again, it ends up getting scheduled for 2 p.m. So they reschedule twice. Originally, it was 2 p.m. on the 24th. Then it gets rescheduled to 10:30 a.m. on the 25th. And then the day of, on the 25th, it gets scheduled to 2 p.m. once again. And towards the end of this video, I'm going to revisit this. We're going to go through some other stuff in the middle of the video, but I'm going to show you why that's so interesting that Epstein appears to have like this target time of 2 p.m. This window of time that will work for him is 2 p.m. That's what it was going to be the day prior, and then that's what it ends up being on the next day on the 25th. And once again, I'll show you why that's interesting towards the end of the video. And then I'm including this email too because it's actually like a super straightforward thing here where it's just like, I want to introduce Jeffrey with my girlfriend. Can you ask him to call me, please? And then you have Leslie Groff saying, sure will, here. And then you literally just have her name again. So I mean, this is a very beautiful, very concise, short little document that just shows you that these two things are linked. That this person right here who's redacted, who I now know her name is Eliza, is talking to Leslie Groff, and then they confirm her name is Milana Valmont. So I thought that was just a great little email to show us all the chain here of what's going on. So let's actually talk about this woman then, because I went immediately to Google and I just put in Milana Valmont, and this is who came up. This is one of the founding members and CEO of KiraCoin, which is a very popular cryptocurrency. Now, I'm going to take you into some of the details as to why it adds up that this is actually the same woman. And the first reason I have is, well, she's very young. She's the kind of person that Epstein might have wanted over at his townhouse for a meeting. This image was taken at some point around 2020, where they use it here in this promotional for their cryptocurrency, or KiraCore, whatever their company is called, that she founded with this guy here. Now, I actually looked into the files to see if I could find anything about him, because she says that very early on she met him, I think somewhere in Europe or something, and they had the idea to do this internet exchange protocol called Kira. Okay, but he didn't come up in any of the files. I haven't seen anything about this guy, but we know that this image of her was taken in 2020. And I'm making a point about that because, as I'll show you here, we don't know her age. Nowhere out there can I find her age, and it's actually very weird. Her backstory just doesn't really make sense to me, and I'm going to explain why. But here we have a little bit of that backstory here. She says, I grew up in LA, then moved to New York City to study finance and psychology. She also says, after graduating from Fordham University, I started working as a private equity analyst for a few years before transitioning into blockchain full-time. I joined crypto ecosystem in late 2016, first as an investor, then in June 2017, I joined Binance. So then she's just going into her crypto journey. But if you roll this back here where she says, for a few years before transitioning into blockchain, she worked as a private equity analyst. Then she started in crypto in late 2016. Well, if you go back 3 years from 2016, a few years, where she started working as a private equity analyst, you see that that is the exact period of time where she started meeting Jeffrey Epstein. Here we have June 18th, 2013, which is like the first instance where her name comes up. But now let's start picking apart her story a little bit because it's not really adding up for me, and I'll show you why here. Here we have a interview between Milana Valmont and some guy on YouTube that interviews people in tech. And it's what she says in this clip that kind of starts to, set off some red flags for me. I'll play it for you here.
Yeah. And where are you from? Where did you spend your younger years?
So I was born in Moscow, Russia, and when I was about 14, I moved to Los Angeles. So I spent about like 14 years in America. Then I moved to Europe and, kind of been traveling since then.
Yeah.
All right, so she says she moved to LA when she was 14 years old. But that's not what she said in a Q&A. What she said in this Q&A, she says, "I grew up in LA, then moved to New York City to study finance and psychology." So would you say that you grew up in LA if you lived in Moscow until 14 years old? Because I wouldn't. That doesn't make any sense. You grew up in Russia. And then at the most, you spent like 2 or 3 years in LA before you moved to New York City. And I feel like her growing up in Russia actually is what makes more sense, because if you search here on YouTube, you'll find her YouTube channel. And for some reason, when she was making this YouTube channel like a year or two ago, she opted to do it completely in Russian. And it doesn't seem like that was working out very well, because she put out some admittedly very high quality videos here, but she did everything in Russian. She's speaking in Russian. The thumbnails are in Russian. And as you can see here, her description or bio is completely in Russian, which again, I'm not really sure why you would do that if you grew up in LA and if you were living in America for most of your life. Okay. And this is where we get into the suspicious part, at least for me, where I don't really believe what she's saying, and I cannot find anywhere on the internet what her age is. I have not been able to find her date of birth anywhere, and I have yet to set up an Instagram account to see if I can sort through her Instagram to see if I can find her age or her supposed age. But one thing that might be really helpful from you guys actually is to see if you can find it. For instance, we have the Fordham University Alumni Directory. Now, I can't access this. Most people can't. You have to be a member of the Fordham University in order to have access to this directory. So if you know anyone or if you can access this yourself, please get into this directory and search up her name. I'll put it here on the screen. Her name is Milana Valmont, and this is how it's spelled. Search for it, see if you can find it, and search anywhere else you can to see if we can find this person's age. Because if we have her date of birth, like a real date of birth, either from whatever, LA County or the county that she was living in New York, or something out of this alumni directory, or her Instagram, for example, then we can cross-reference, obviously, right here, June 15th, 2013, and we can figure out if Leslie Groff and Epstein conspired to have an underage girl come to their Manhattan townhouse, okay? So we're actually getting very, very close here to figuring out if Leslie Groff actually scheduled a meeting between Jeffrey Epstein and an underage girl at this townhouse, which I'll explain, towards the end of the video why that's so important. But real quick, before we get into all that, I also wanted to show you guys the pictures that I've been talking about. This one appeared in one of my videos where we obviously have two underage girls in Jeffrey Epstein's house watching him get a haircut on the day in question. This is June 25th, 2013. This is the day that those girls were there. And if Milana herself was actually underage, then she might be one of these two women. Again, if you look at the picture of her, this was taken around 2020. She would have been 7 years younger than she is right here at the time that she was meeting with Jeffrey Epstein. So you guys see what I'm saying here, how close we're getting to proving that Leslie Groff invited an underage woman to Jeffrey Epstein's house. Not only just invited, but scheduled around all of the stuff that was going on that day. I mean, the amount of stuff that was going on this day, it has been so frustrating trying to piece this day together, because you also have this other pair of women that show up, and somebody anonymous, and also another anonymous person at 1 p.m., as well as like a whole bunch of other people earlier in the day. This was an extremely eventful day, and we have this woman here in the orange, and I don't know who this is. At first, I thought it was Ghislaine Maxwell, but then I found this image where she's got blonde hair, and you can kind of zoom in here and you can see a little bit more of her, and that is not Ghislaine. Like, Ghislaine never looked like this. But then we also have this woman here in the black top, and I'm assuming this is Ghislaine Maxwell. You can actually see a bit of a top of a head right here, but it's not enough to really go off of. But both of these women have Ghislaine's body style, especially this woman, and so I'm assuming this is Ghislaine, but I still have no idea who this is, because that other woman that showed up, named Barbara Endholy or Endham or whatever, she doesn't look like this. She has always had very short, red hair, and she's got a bit of a stockier build than this woman. I mean, both of these women, the black top and the orange top, they're very skinny, right? They're very thin. Much thinner than Barbara Endham, and Barbara is also much, much older. I think she's like in her 70s now, so you would have seen some age here. And then I also cross-referenced these images with this lady in the orange top and this lady with the darker top with a body shot that I found of Milana specifically, and it doesn't match up. But what does match up to me, potentially, if this is a younger version of Milana, is that this would make sense because the hair color, there's another photo where you can see this girl's hair color better. It's like a dirty blonde. That actually matches up pretty well with her natural hair color, as you saw in the video of Milana that I showed you where she was talking about her younger years. Okay, and so what I've actually done is I've gone ahead and sent an email to Kira, the company where she works. I sent this email last night and I said, hello, I am doing a piece on the Epstein story and came across your CEO in a number of emails such as the following. And I referenced one email where her name is explicitly mentioned. And then I included another one between Jeffrey Epstein and Leslie where they were talking about Milana can come at 2 p.m. instead of 10:30. Because again, Epstein wanted that target time of 2 p.m. And so I said, is Milana available to comment on her visit with Jeffrey Epstein on June 25th, 2013? If I had one question to be answered, I would want to know if she knows the identities of the two young girls, these two right here, because she was here on the same day, who are redacted in over a dozen photographs taken that day at Epstein's townhouse where Milana was scheduled to be. Thanks. And so I doubt we'll hear back from them, right? I don't think they're going to say anything. And this is basically where I've hit the wall with this. So we need to figure out how old this woman actually is. If we can find state or federal records, LA County, New York County, Instagram. Again, if anybody can find out how old this woman actually is right now, or her date of birth, for example, then we can cross-reference that with the date of June 25th, 2013, and we can see exactly how old she was on that date. So please, if you want to do anything, this is a very good thing to touch on because we're going after Leslie Groff here, guys. We are absolutely coming for Leslie Groff. That is my sole focus right now. And I want to mention something else in this video real quick before we get to more stuff on this subject. I just want to say that it really doesn't matter to me at this point if this girl was underage, which I'm pretty sure she was. Because I was thinking about it today, I was getting frustrated with all the files. I've been through like hundreds of files, right? And I've downloaded probably 50 different files at this point trying to connect all the dots. And then it just hit me all of a sudden. We have this indictment, guys, from the Southern District of New York. I explained this in my prior video. In 2019, they wanted to indict Jeffrey Epstein for sex trafficking conspiracy. And what they say in this document is actually shocking because they actually say that at this exact location that we're talking about right now, in 2002 to 2005, this already happened. They already know that this happened at this location right here in New York. But not only that, they admit that this happens in Florida too. They said that from 2002 to 2005 in Florida, the same thing happened, right? Let me see if I can find that here. Okay, I found it right here. And the Palm Beach residents, Jeffrey Epstein, the defendant, enticed and recruited and caused to be enticed and recruited, which means he allowed other people to recruit young girls for him, dozens of minor girls to engage in sex acts with him. Okay, so they're admitting that it happened at this location already. They're admitting that it happened in Florida and that they know for a fact that they knew this was happening. Well, guess what? We go to the NPA and it says literally right here, the United States also agrees that it will not institute any criminal charges against any potential co-conspirators of Epstein, including but not limited to Sarah Kellen, Adriana Ross, Leslie Groff, or Nadia Marchinkova. So the indictment is saying, we know this happened in the past in Florida, where this non-prosecution agreement that specifically lists Leslie Groff's name happened, and that at the same exact time it was happening at this Manhattan property where it is now said that it's happening again. And then we go over to the Epstein library, and if you put in Leslie Groff's name, what you see is that it comes up like 150,000 times between the years where all of this stuff is supposed to be happening. So it just doesn't make any sense to be skeptical in any kind of way that Leslie Groff was not involved in exactly what they are listing here. Because now they are charging Epstein in 2019 for the same exact thing, guys. The same thing that happened here in 2002 to 2005 and that happened in Florida where they listed her specifically as a co-conspirator. The dots are just so easy to connect. And now, yes, it looks like this woman might have actually been under 18 at the time where Leslie Groff was setting her to meet with Epstein. And this woman was born in Russia. So I don't know how we get her date of birth outside of maybe the stuff that I've listed already, like county records or something. But if we can get her date of birth, if we can get her legitimate age in some kind of official record, and we cross-reference that and she's under 18, then it is undeniable that Leslie Groff scheduled at least this one instance with this girl who was underage with Jeffrey Epstein. But that's not all. I actually want to show you a little bit more about the specific day in question, because I want you guys to understand why it's so important that we could potentially get somebody like Leslie Groff to actually face justice. And it's because there are a whole ton of other people that were set to be at the townhouse in or around this date, specifically on the day. And when we talk about the Epstein files, we have all this evil shit going on, right? Potentially money laundering, bank fraud, arms trafficking, the pedophilia, of course, and there are so many people involved. And I have this theory where if we can get one person, just one person like Leslie Groff, especially like Leslie Groff, somebody who was instrumental to Epstein's daily routine for years. I mean, most people put her involvement at the 20-year mark. She was involved with Epstein for decades, since at least 2003, when he gave her a luxury sedan because she had a kid. He obviously really liked Leslie Groff. If we can just get her and get her to face charges and get her to start talking, that is a major failure point for this cover-up. I mean, seriously, we're going to go through some names here. We have Mortimer Zuckerman, Leon Black, Steve Teich, Hanson, Todd, Jessica, Susanna, Jess, Lisa, who of course is the girl that they were talking to about meeting her friend Milana, and Fancelli, okay, whoever that is. And specifically who we're going to be looking at here mostly is Leon Black, and Jess as well, because he was talking about coming over at some point as well on the 25th. So let's get into this real quick. We have this email where we have Jean-Luc Brunel talking to Epstein in the days before. And Epstein obviously really likes Jean-Luc Brunel because he's saying, where are you going to be Monday? Which was originally the day where Milana and her friend was going to show up. This is 2 days prior to that. Epstein is now trying to coordinate, where are you going to be on Monday, Jean-Luc Brunel? Hey, pedophile, where are you going to be? I got a couple of young girls coming over. And then Jean-Luc Brunel says he's in London and then he's going to go to New York. And Epstein's like, ooh, come to the island, come to the island. We have some stuff to discuss. Here in this email, he says, even if you are not too tired, come on Sunday morning and fly back with me to New York at this Manhattan townhouse Monday morning, where we're going to have, two young girls waiting for us basically at 2 p.m. Of course, that gets rescheduled to the following day, but Jean-Luc Brunel is like this model management guy. He can, I guess, be wherever the hell he wants to be at any given time. Obviously, Epstein really likes him, so it's not like he has obligations that he can't break at any given time and go hang out with Epstein for a couple of days. And this is why I think that Jean-Luc Brunel was very likely at the townhouse on the day in question, where these two young girls were. But let's move on here. We also have Leon Black. Now, just a few days prior, on the 23rd, we see that he was very eager to get a meeting with Jeffrey Epstein. He says, hope you are having a good time, and perhaps when you are in New York next month, you can come to the opera up here. On any event, let's get together. Okay, and then he talks about some other stuff, but who really gives a shit? All that we really care about is that Leon is, saying, hey, let's get together. And he will end up at the townhouse just 2 days later. There's nothing next month, nothing like, hey, we should get together soon. No, he's there within 48 hours, and I'll show you that in a second here. But we also have another person here who I don't know who this is. And I feel like this might be Jess Staley, because Jess Staley is also itching to get in here. In fact, here we have the email where he's saying, okay, at least I'm good for sentence structure, which is in response to this lady's email down here. But then he says, see you Monday. And this is potentially to Jeffrey Epstein. And Jeffrey Epstein says back to Jess Staley, great, yeah, we'll see you Monday. Sounds good, man. Which, at this point on June 23rd, I mean, Epstein knows these young girls are coming to his house. So now he's like coordinating with Jess Staley to be there as well. So now we have potentially like Leon Black, Jess Staley, and Jean-Luc Brunel all there. And then let me show you this. This is the schedule for that day where we see that Leon Black is there at 8:30. I mean, obviously he could have stayed longer if he wanted to. And then we have 3 people that show up just before these women get here. We have 1, 2, 3 people completely redacted. And I found another file. I found another version of this file somewhere, and the same 3 names were blacked out, and you just couldn't tell who they are. And for context, you see here 2 p.m. Rich and Darren. I actually found an email where this gets pushed back. Leslie Groff emails Rich and Darren and says, hey, we're moving your thing to 3 p.m. Because at some point in here, right, we have redacted. All these people that we know might be coming over, Jean-Luc Brunel, Leon Black, and Jess Staley, potentially coming over here at these different times. And then what ends up happening is those girls get scheduled for this time, 2 p.m. So Rich and Darren get moved back, and then Barbara Enbaum gets moved to like 4:30. She ends up showing up at like 4:16 p.m. or something, I forget. There's so many files here that I've looked through to piece this thing together, but I can't show them all to you guys because it's so complicated. I'd have to like sequence them just right so I could explain it all to you, and I'd still screw it up. But just know that, yes, these 3 guys are supposedly coming on this day. There's a really good chance that they're here. And now we have, 3 redacted names. We have the 2 p.m. meeting with Rich and Darren getting moved back. And yes, the 2 young girls are replacing this 2 p.m. meeting. And then at 2:51 p.m., there's a file that I found where Leslie Groff sends up the updated evening schedule, where she includes the barber that you saw in those other photos. There's a guy cutting Jeffrey Epstein's hair. She schedules him in. Paul Morris here, actually, he gets cut. There's an email that goes out to him and says like, oh, Epstein's busy today. And what I think happened, guys, is I think whatever happened with those 2 young girls happened between 1 p.m. where people were showing up. You have all these people coming in all day long. And then you have at 2 o'clock, Rich and Darren get moved back to 3 p.m. If something happened to those young girls, it happened between 1 p.m. and 3 p.m. Because potentially the girls were moved back down to 1 for some reason, or they came at 2, and all 3 of these people, and Leon Black potentially, could have been there, right, at the same time. So that's what we're dealing with here, guys. That is what we're dealing with. And then I just want to throw this on here too, because I found it very interesting. There's a text message with Leon Black that is literally right in the middle of the rescheduling for those 2 girls the day prior. We literally have this moment where the 2 girls are like, hey, we're stuck in DC. Do we want to reschedule? Blah, 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 blah. Epstein sends a voice message out to one of the girls saying, yeah, go ahead and reschedule for tomorrow. And right in the middle of those texts, Epstein sends an email to, I believe, Leslie Groff, and he says, text Leon. Like, Leon had expected to be there for those girls. And then, of course, they had to reschedule and do all their stuff. And so then Leon gets penciled in for the 25th at 8:30 a.m. or 8:30 a.m., quote unquote. Who really knows what he's doing or how long he's going to be there throughout that day. But if we could see that Leon was there the 24th and then he gets put in for the 25th as well, right while in the middle of all that confusion with the 2 young girls, they're saying text Leon. I just think that's potentially something right there as well. And that is why this is so important, everybody. If we can just get one person like Leslie Groff to face charges, to face justice for what she did to all these young women, it immediately starts branching out. I mean, this goes exponential. Then we get Leon. Then we get Jess Staley. We get more and more information. And with every arrest, these people will be forced to reveal even more information for us to grab onto and use it to pull them even further under the surface of the water. And that's basically where I'm going to leave this one for now. I'm just going to put this out there, see what happens with it. I will be revisiting this subject, however, especially if we can get a date of birth or official age for this girl, Milana, right? That's the whole thing here. It all hinges on her, how old she was when she went to visit. And then if she is under 18, we're going straight to the top with this, because this would be definitive proof that Leslie Groff did this in at least one instance. And then I bet you we could find more. And so that's where I'm going to end this video, guys. Take care. Have a nice day. I'll see you in the next one.